Thorndike versus Pavlov by Courtney Hicks and Tyler Perry. In this presentation, we'll be looking at the similarities and the differences between the two. Edward Thorndike. He is an American psychologist. He studied behaviorism. He was born August 31st, 1874 in Williamsburg, Massachusetts. He died August 9th, 1949 in Montrose, New York. He is best known for his work on learning theory that led to the development of operant conditioning within behaviorism. When looking more into his work or conducting his experiments, he used a puzzle box experiment with cats. Ivan Pavlov. He is a Russian psychologist who studied behaviorism. He was born September 26, 1849. He died February 27, 1936, and he was best known for his work on learning theory with classical conditioning. The experiment that he conducted was an experiment with dogs to study the effects of the associations between a stimulus and a response, and also the frequency with the reinforcement. So a comparison with the basic information. The similarities is that they both studied behaviorism, they both used animals to conduct their experiment, and they both contributed to the learning theory in terms of looking at a stimulus and a response and looking at the associations between the two. The differences is that they're from two different countries, and one studied classical conditioning while the other focused on operant conditioning. Edward Thorndike's educational theory. Thorndike's theory was connectionism, which he believed that learning is the result of associations forming between a stimuli and its responses. He also believed that associations become weakened or strengthened based on the frequency and nature of the stimulus and response pairings. There are three primary laws with connectionism. Law number one is law of effect. Responses to a situation followed by a reward will be strengthened and become habitual responses to that situation. Meaning that when a reward is present, the response will happen more often, and over time, it'll just become natural and become a habit. Number two is the law of readiness. A series of responses can be chained together to satisfy some goal, which will result in annoyance if blocked. Number three is the law of exercise. Connections become strengthened with practice and weakened when practice is discontinued. So this picture gives an overview of Thorndike's cat experiment. In the first square, we see that the cat is trying to get to the fish, the food, whatever you want to call it. The cat is trying to get to the food, but he can't get to the food without getting out the box. So eventually, the cat is fumbling around, and he gets to the lever. He realizes once he pulls the lever, he is able to get out of the box, which is the sequence that we see in the second box, third box, and fourth box. When the lever is pulled, he is able to get out of the box into the food. In this experiment, the lever is the stimulus and the door opening is the response. And it's established because it results in a desired occurrence, which is the cat escaping the box. So with this one, he focused more on operant conditioning. Ivan Pavlov's educational theory was the Pavlovian theory. He believed that learning is the result of associating a stimulus with a response. The three stages of classical conditioning is before conditioning, which is an unconditioned stimulus produces an unconditioned response. The second stage is during conditioning, which is when a stimulus that does not produce a response is associated with an unconditioned stimulus to become a conditioned stimulus. The third stage is after conditioning. The conditioned stimulus has been associated with the unconditioned stimulus to produce a new conditioned stimulus. So with this experiment, he used a dog food, and a bell. When the dog sees the food, which is the unconditioned stimulus, the dog's mouth begins to salivate, which is the unconditioned response. And then in the second square, before conditioning, we see that when the dog sees the bell, which is the neutral stimulus, nothing happens because he doesn't have anything to relate it to. It's just an object. In the third box, we see that the bell is present with the food, which results in the salivation, which is the unconditioned response. So over time, after associating the bell with the food, having them both present, the dog begins to salivate when he hears the bell due to that association. So now the bell is a conditioned stimulus, and the salivation is a conditioned response. So with this, Pavlov used classical conditioning. So with the two educational theories, to conclude this presentation, the similarities is that they both agree that learning comes from associating a stimulus with a response, and they both agree that a desired behavior is capable of being learned. The differences is that Pavlov focused on classical conditioning and Thorndike focused on operant conditioning. And the difference between the two is that classical conditioning depends on developing associations between events, whereas operant conditioning involves learning from the consequences of our behavior. So overall, the two had a similar yet pretty different perspective in terms of learning and in terms of education in general.